From breaking a pro wrestler's jaw with a swift righty, to taking a world-class jiu-jitsu champion down like a pro, Kamaru Usman has come a long way, but not without some brutal fights, like his face-off against Tyron Woodley. And man oh man, was this fight a barn burner or what? The whole time, I felt like I was watching two bulldozers collide in the octagon. Usman came to the fight with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove, and he did not disappoint. From the get-go, he used his wrestling to control Tyron and stop him from striking, all the while peppering him with shots. As for Woodley, well, he just couldn't seem to get anything going, and so he eventually broke down, all thanks to Usman's relentless pace and ground and pound. So by the time the bell rang, it was clear who the better man was. Oh, and the best and most brutal part of the fight? The fifth round and the final 3 minutes were where Usman really unleashed the beast inside him by not letting Tyron catch a single second's break. Not only did he land these super savage punches to his torso, but he also pinned him down so he could really break Tyron's ambition to win the game. Ouch. Now, I have to say, this was the moment we all knew Kamaru didn't let his opponents go easy. But this defining moment also happened in his fight with Rafael dos Anjos, which was a full showcase of Usman's grappling skills at their finest. He took on the veteran fighter in a way that absolutely dominated him from start to finish. Honestly guys, it was like watching a lion take down a gazelle. Throughout the game, Usman's wrestling was just too much for dos Anjos to handle.
Undisputed. Look at this! First time Usman has been grounded in his UFC career.
Huge first.
Especially because he repeatedly kept taking him down and controlling him on the ground. But what was really impressive was how Usman mixed in his striking to keep his opponent guessing. He also landed some big shots that rocked dos Anjos, and even went on to cut him open with some vicious elbows. As for Rafael, well, the poor guy had no answer for Usman's relentless pressure and gave out soon enough. But he hasn't been the only one, and won't be the last to fall over with Usman's tenacity. Hayder Hassan is another of those fighters who fought Kamaru in the TUF 21 finale, and I just knew from the opening bell who this game belonged to. Right from the beginning, Usman seemed to be on a mission. He came out swinging and immediately put the pressure on Hassan, who was backed up against the cage one too many times, as Kamaru unleashed a barrage of strikes on him. Not that he didn't try to fight though, but sadly for him, Usman's striking was too much to handle. Honestly, the sound of those punches landing on Hassan was bone-chilling, and it was only a matter of time before he'd get a punch that would end the game. And it happened soon enough in the second round. Usman caught Hassan with a huge overhand right that sent him crashing to the canvas. He followed that up with a vicious arm triangle choke that forced the opponent to tap out of the game. It was a brutal knockout, but what was most impressive was how Usman fought like a machine. Like, he didn't even give Hassan a chance to breathe, let alone retaliate. But then again, that's what you get when you're fighting the Nigerian Nightmare. And at this point, I think not only Hassan, but Jorge Masvidal knows this well enough, because in his fight with Kamaru in UFC 261, the fight was crazy. I'll even go so far as to say that this fight was a display of ultimate power and precision by Usman, who took on the always dangerous Masvidal all too easily. From the opening bell, he used his grappling and striking to control his opponent and wear him down. All in all, I'd say the fight was a vicious knockout, with Usman firing on all cylinders without holding back. Oh, and just to make it all the more impressive, did you know that Masvidal had never been knocked out before this? Yup, Kamaru is the force to make that happen too. How cool is that? Although, is it as cool as his fight with Gilbert Burns? Because in this one, Kamaru was in full control. This was a highly anticipated matchup that, as I remember, had taken up all the hype. And it started pretty well too, with Burns landing some pretty big shots early on. So imagine my surprise and applause when Usman gradually took over the fight. Plus, remember that huge right hand that sent Burns reeling? I've gotta say, this was a dominating performance that few will be able to forget. And so was his face-off against Emil Weber Meek at UFC Fight Night 124. From the get-go, Usman came out swinging and grappling like a man possessed. Meek tried to put up a fight, but he was no match for the Nigerian Nightmare. Usman's strikes were like lightning bolts, and his grappling was smoother than a fresh jar of peanut butter. Meek tried to escape Usman's clutches, but it was like trying to outrun a cheetah on a dirt bike. And when Usman landed that huge right hand in the second round, Meek went down harder than a sack of potatoes in a tornado. Now, you may think I'm going overboard, but you'd understand why if you'd seen the fight at all. Throughout the whole thing, Usman kept pounding on Meek with a barrage of ground and pound that probably had the opposite guy wishing he'd taken up knitting instead of MMA. Hey, you can't say he didn't warn him earlier though, because Usman did say that Meek wouldn't be able to hang on to him in the fight, and he proved that alright. And all that left him to emerge victorious in a spectacular fashion. It was a display of power and precision that left the crowd in awe and Meek seeing stars. But was Meek as badly shaped up as Colby Covington? Because boy oh boy, that was a fight that had been building for a long time, and for good reason. Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington absolutely despised each other, and it showed in the lead up to their bout at UFC 245. There was plenty of trash talk on both sides, but Usman let his fighting do the talking in the octagon. It was an intense back and forth battle that had fans on the edge of their seats. Both fighters had their moments, but it was Usman who came out on top in the end. He landed a huge right hand that sent Covington crashing to the canvas, and followed up with some brutal ground and pound to finish the fight. And to top it all off, Usman gave Covington a little trash talk of his own after the fight, telling him to shut up and take the whooping like a man. It was a savage beatdown that cemented Usman as one of the best welterweights in the world. But I don't think I've seen a fight as glorious as Kamaru's bout with Demian Maia, because this one was on an equal footing to a pretty large extent. During the fight, Kamaru Usman was about to fight against grappling ace Demian Maia at UFC Fight Night 129. And while I don't doubt the Nigerian Nightmare's ability to win a fair fight, this one was complicated. Apart from being the kind of ace I described earlier, Demian was also the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in the world. He's a BJJ black belt, guys. So considering all this, everyone really thought this game would be too much for Usman to handle, but he proved them wrong pretty well. First, he chose his superior wrestling and striking to keep the fight under control, despite Maia's various attempts to take him down. But when Usman's takedown defense started, Demian had no ground to stand on. And in the end, the Nigerian pro was awarded a unanimous decision victory, proving how versatile he could be when adapting to his opponent's style. But then again, when has Kamaru ever let his fans down by taking it lightly against his competitors, eh? After all, isn't that what all of these most brutal fights of his career prove?
You know, it's every occasion calls for a different dress code, so this one calls for